What's good with the YouTube? Convicts Perspective, it's your boy Big Flacco. Smashing, dashing, sliding on through. As always, you already know, a little bit of energy. Got my co-host Big Senor Rojo, and we got another submission from an anonymous subscriber, man. This one's gonna be kind of interesting, man. It talks about the 80s and about the early struggles of the Norteños out there in these main lines, man. And and old viejo, just keeping it 100 about all the sacrifices they went through. And it's an interesting topic right now, man. We thought about, going off and creating a topic off what he wrote, but we thought it's just better just to read what he said.
So, no doubt, no doubt. Yeah, like Flacco said, this one's anonymous, so we don't know, so I mean, do we need a disclaimer? You know what I mean?
This one's factual though, pretty much, bro.
Okay. I haven't had a chance to go all the way over it, so just throwing that out there. This is from one of our subscribers, man. And I'll get right to it. Saludos, Flacco and Rojo. Been watching you vatos for a minute, and much respects in what you share. I'm an older vato, and I like how raza interact, but now both Norteños and Sureños. But check this out. I'm going to write something out, and it's up to you if you want to use it or not. There was a time, carnal, that the pedal was serio. Puro guerra y todo. I did time in Chole, Tracy, Vacaville, Folsom, Quentin, and other pintas in the 80s and 90s. We had to fight for our respect just to have tables and phones. A lot of MA were still on the lines, and the Sureños would act on their behalf. It was common to be on any prison yard just 10 deep with hundreds of Sureños. Very few places had the majority of homies. Only Vacaville, we had numbers. I don't forget the things that happened when they hit the homie Puerco from Merced in the kitchen in Folsom. The MA had the inside connects to make moves and had him move job assignments to the kitchen detail. They stabbed him 16 times and he has limited use of his left side. Or the time in Tehachapi, they brought 12 of us to that pinta. 4 locked it up off the bus and 2 turned Christian. As we were walking to our building, the 2 Christians backed away, and so did the COs, and we were rushed by 30 Sureños. It was a setup, and I ended up getting stomped out unconscious, and 2 other homies got stabbed bad. Myself, Kiki from Fresno, Tigre de Hanford, Kachi from Oakland, and Jojo de Stockton all stood up and fought. These scenarios happened all the time. And what these young Norteños and Sureños need to know, we just wanted to do our time and be treated like men and never look like punks. Chale, that wasn't happening. You can't move forward off this pedal without keeping it solid. The Sureños were trained to try to eliminate any target, us, any chance they had, and we stood our ground, and those pesetas that cowered up or grabbed the Bible, we were happy they left. What I'm getting at is most of us were not tipped up, but we have the battle scars from the wars we fought, and respect needs to be put on the Norteños who never turned yellow or bowed down to MA or Sureños. The cause these youngsters know nothing about. We knew where we stood on any yard, and vatos were going to respect us. It was us fighting the war that outnumbered 30-1. And I'm proud to say that we stood side by side in battle with many good Norteños. The NF and structure get all the glory, but us Norteños were out there on enemy lines every day. Any older real Sureños know this. In order for all to heal, don't let the past be forgotten. It's a slap to the legacy we have that does not get recognized. We had yards where we had every, I'm going to read this word for word. We had yards where we had every coming tables and everything, but constantly had to take one-on-one fades because we would get called out, or some were just looking for a reason. This was life for Norteño in the 80s, and it was no walk in the park. All this went through created hate for the enemy because we was just some vatos from up north trying to do our time. Things changed in the 90s. Structure got deeper. We became better organized, and our numbers got deeper. Before this, no time to politic or have problems within cause. We had real issues and real threats. Anyway, you can use this or go off topic. I like what you guys do. Just feel the 80s needs to be talked about. Respect to my former enemies, many of them were just doing what they were told. Siempre adelante, T. Di Madera.
Wow.
Hey, that's about how it went down.
That's as real as it gets, man. And I get where he's coming from because we don't talk about the early struggles of the 80s, you know what I mean? What was really going down, man. And we've heard stories from a lot of old timers. A lot of the carnales were locked up at that time. Structure was just finally starting to come out. So it was left to regular norteños, vatos from up north that just started banging norte or just started representing it, that were on these líneas. You know what I'm saying? I've heard stories of back in the days that, you know, vatos would get sent down south, and what would happen would be some of them would pick up the Bible, others would be told they have to put their shirts on, others would have to pay rent. No real active norteño back in the 80s would ever tolerate that. But there was some people that turned coward. But there was those select few that went out to these yards and held on strong. And they had to fight, they had to battle, they had to go through all this stuff. It wasn't just the NF that went through all this stuff in the 60s and 70s. The 80s were just as brutal, especially being a new group that was just founded and formed. You know, the Norteños really came out probably around 79, 80, around that time frame, you know, and they were left to their own devices. They got a little bit of clecha from the NF, but other than that, it was them out there on these main lines. You didn't have many undercover carnals out there in the lines. If you did, you were lucky. So a lot of homeboys would just get sent to joints and they'd have to do what they had to do. And sometimes they would be on yards, I heard, like he said, where there's 10 or 20 homeboys and there's like 200 sureños. So there'd be sureños that would want to call them out or cause little disrespectful issues just so they get the one-on-one fade. And they would go back there and they'd take these one-on-one fades all the time just to avoid having to go into a riot and get kicked off the yard. So a lot of homeboys had to handle their business, man. And I don't think the norteños from the 80s get enough respect. We always talk about the birth of the NR. We always talk about what the carnales did. A lot of them weren't out there on these main lines. It was the regular ends or the regular dudes that were from up north that just started to push those lines. And I think he's right. It has to be recognized.
Hey, another thing too, man, that lumps in with this time frame is the Fresno split. That started happening in the mid to late 80s as well. You know, so not only, you know, the norteños were getting deep in some prisons, you know what I mean? They were able to establish a few strongholds and whatnot, and finally be able to enjoy a yard without so much threat of the sureños. Now we got the bulldogs. So it's like, the 80s were a rough time. You know, and I tell, like, people my age now, I'm closing in on 50, right? When I was a first termer back in the early 90s, I would talk to some of the people that were my age now, and it was a whole different world, man. And they were full of scars and pokes and you know, gashes. Man, they went through some stuff in the 80s, man. And like Flaco said, it's an overlooked time frame. Just because they slammed all the C's down, there wasn't a lot of, you know, the best communications in the world, but them dudes were out there doing their thing, you know.
They weren't how you say it. They were in survival mode in the 80s. Let's just keep it real. You know what I'm saying? There was very few established yards where the homeboys could go to that was a safe haven. I think Vacaville may have been the only one at that time. You know, Soledad was about 50-50, right? But a lot of the other prisons, man, they were outnumbered, you know, and you know, administration would set things up. They would send you to certain yards knowing what's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? And see, as a norteño, it wasn't like how you see it now. Get off, right? It was maintain your mainline status. We're going to be out there. You know, you'd be on a yard, maybe 5, 6 homeboys. You don't know when it's going to kick off. You know what I'm saying? You had to do what you had to do. I mean, and I think you do got to pay tribute to what these vatos did, man, because I've heard a lot of stories, man. You know what I mean? About homeboys going this pin, and just shit just going all bad. Them going out to the line, knowing that there's hundreds of the Sureños out there. And the Sureños had a different attitude back then. There was a lot of hate. People don't talk about that. There was real live hate between these groups, you know? And, you know, I know things have changed now for the better, but you can't forget what happened back in the days either, though. I think that's what he's trying to get at. Like, in order to heal and move forward, trying to look at all that as the same, you can't forget what everybody went through, though. There was a lot of oppression, a lot of abuse. And a lot of that came basically from their big homies pretty much dictating them what to do. You know, because, I mean, think about it. Northern California, Southern California. how often are you going to really interact on the streets with these individuals? So you have a natural hate for people that you don't even know. You know, terms like Farmento, Buster, this and that, man. So it was already being that mindset was already festering to where they were already looking at North Daniels as an inferior species, basically. You know what I'm saying? As an inferior group. You know what I'm saying? So what's going to happen? Oppression will kick off anything. You're going to have to attack that. You're going to have to do what you had to do. And a lot of the Vatos in the 80s did what they had to do. It's as simple as that.
I remember one of the bros when I was in Quentin telling me on his last term that they started him off by sending him to Calipatria.
Yeah. Got
into it right off right out of R&R. I want to say they sent him to Lancaster after that. Then they sent him to, I want to say it was Chuckawalla, bro, but I could be mistaken. And it's like, man, you know this dude's from Hayward. He's got Hayward blasted from shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah.
And these are the places you're going to continue to send him. He stayed solid throughout the whole thing, but it's just like, man, the administration used to do you dirty. Nowadays, they make all these special yards for all these special groups. There wasn't none of that stuff back in the days, man. You got a bus ticket and that's where they sent you. And a lot of times it'd be to a place they know you had no business being.
And PC was the whole back then. PC was the whole. I think the only yard that was really considered like a soft yard was probably CMC East. You know what I'm saying? That was a place where people would go and hide, they say, back in the days. You know what I mean? Yeah. But other than that, man, you could get sent to any prison back then, and they didn't care. You know, it was a lot easier. You know, if you're from down south, 9 out of 10 times you're going to end up on a yard where you have the strong majority of manpower. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? It was very rare to get to a yard with North Daniels outnumbered the Surenos anywhere. You know, it was a different ballgame back then.
Yeah, when I was in Susanville on the 3-yard, bro, it was like 111 to 113, man. I never seen that. Yeah. I've never seen them. The numbers are similar like that in some places now, but you're not going to go to no places where there's going to be like 270 Northerners and 15 Surenos.
No,
the numbers aren't like that.
The only place that was like that was Solano in the 90s, late 90s. It was a level 3 yard, but it was called the 2 yard because some incident happened to where they did something. Some Surenos had rushed some homeboys, I think in the level 2 yard when they were sleeping. So those homeboys came out and went to that yard. So what they ended up doing was moving on the Surenos. They got their numbers to I think 5. And the 5 that were there were either dope addicts or Christians. So whenever a new busload came, right, they'd send maybe 10 of them. They would send 2 or 3 soldados just to rush all 10 every time. So every 2 months you would hear about them getting off. That's the only yard that I've ever seen besides San Quentin. San Quentin didn't have no Surenos on the main line in our time. And
there wasn't that. Yeah.
You know, DVI was, more North Daniels, but there was a few Surenos there. That's the only other yard as far as outside of San Quentin or anywhere else to where the Surenos were totally outnumbered.
Didn't DVI, they had them on basically, weren't they segregated though in Tracy?
Excuse me. I'm not too sure about the DVI stuff, man, but I know.
I know not historically it wasn't always like that, but I thought during the 90s they were, they never get a chance to come.
No, they were on the same yard, bro, in the 90s.
Is that right?
Yeah. They were going at more with the Bulldogs in the 90s. That was the focus in Tracy. Because that would be a pin that they would be sending them to. You know what I'm saying?
I know Jamestown was out for a while too with the Bulldogs for sure. That was one of them pretty even yards, at least 93, 94, 95 to my understanding. Jamestown was pretty equal. There was more Southerners, but there was a heavy presence of Bulldogs and Northerners as well. I'm sure that place was.
The 80s, that was a place that the homeboys used to say you didn't want to go, that it was all Surenos back in the days. You know what I mean? But they would send homeboys there. That was one of the yards I used to hear about. It wasn't like how you hear it now with the SNY or the 50-50 status that it started to occur in the 90s. It was a real hard prison to go to. I think there, Corcoran, Tehachapi, of course. The only prisons that were pretty much okay at that time were Mill Creek, Solano, Chole, Susanville, Pelican Bay, and just a couple others, you know what I mean? New Folsom as well. Old Folsom was kind of bad back then. Because I heard some stories about homeboys getting sent there in the 80s. For some reason, there was still a lot of inmates that were out there in the main lines in the 80s.
In Folsom, huh?
Yeah, for some reason, I don't know why, because all the NF were slammed down. I think the high priority ones were, because I know in Queen Mas, they had one tier that was NF and one tier that was MF in the 80s. I know that for a fact because Hobo was telling me about that. But you still had people in the 80s. That's where Boxer Enriquez got recruited in Old Folsom. So you still had actually MA members out there like in 83, 84, 85. You didn't have no NF members out there in the lines. If you did, they were probably undercover.
Yeah, they were able to wiggle and last a considerably, considerable amount of time longer than all the NFs. There was still, yeah, like you said, there were still active, in good standing MA individuals. And Folsom's always been, they've had old Folsom on lock for years somehow. You know what I mean? The administration's never juggled it around too much. Like, some pens at 1 year, there'll be 300 Southerners and 10 Northerners. And then 3 years later, it's damn near flipped. You know what I mean? With all the changes and stuff they do, that's never rocked Old Folsom like that, really. Not in my experience, not in my knowledge anyway,
Yeah.
It's always been a bad place to go for anybody from up north.
It was a different time era back then, man. Like in hearing this about the story, what I'm hearing is that they didn't have no time to politic. You know what I'm saying? All these little internal conflicts and all this little bitch and shit that people do nowadays and red on red, they didn't have time to do that back then.
They were too busy looking around.
Too busy doing this. So, remember,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? So it's a different time era, man. And I think that we need to recognize it that, the NF created all this. You know what I mean? They made the sacrifices in the beginning. The 70s as well, they were strong. They gave the Norteños flecha, created the bonds, the formats, did all that. Structure started to push that line. But there was a lot of regular ends that were on these yards back in the 80s that were making these sacrifices out in the yard. Structure wasn't that deep in the beginning.
Yeah.
So it's just something you have to think about.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, times have changed, man. There's everybody's focusing on their own, agendas nowadays. I'm surprised the whole end of hostilities and the venture for everybody just minding their own business essentially and agreeing to coexist. I'm surprised it's been able to go as trouble-free as it has. It's gone relatively smooth. There's been an incident here, an incident there, but I mean, it hasn't been that bad, man, believe it or not. I don't know if I know times change, eras change, generations change, man, but could this have worked in it? Could this have worked in any other era? I don't see it happening.
Politics changed everything, bro. The prison politics changed everything. A lot of these groups back in the days, the Surenos, Norteños, did not really play politics back then, bro. Everybody's now disciplining each other. They have to follow the big homies and so forth. You didn't really have that type of what do you call control over these groups. So everybody has a different agenda now. Now it's all about the money as well. So what always kept everybody together was having a threat from the enemy, basically. That's what kept the struggle together. That's what kept the cause together. Now you don't have none of that. So people are doing whatever they want to do. They're making their money. They don't know what the true cause was all about. They don't know what the struggle was all about. They're not experiencing it no more. They have no idea. We got the tail end of it. We got to experience a little bit of it. I got sent down south for a minute. You know what I mean? So I seen how it was. You know what I mean? How I was treated. You know what I mean?
Where'd they shoot you?
San Luis Obispo, CMC. Which was basically a setup because there was a lot of dropouts in the yard too, right? But they sent a lot of active Sureños and young active Norteños there to that yard. So that's how it all kicked off. So when I'm in the hole, these dudes never seen a Norteño in their life unless they went to YA or something. I got into a little incident. They put me on one tier. They put me in the last fucking cell on the whole floor, and there was 44 Sureños and 2 whites. So when I would go to shower,
they talk bad to you.
They would call me Buster, Farmer. They were spitting at me, throwing piss at me, all kinds of shit, man. You know what I'm saying? It was bad, bro. I was like, whoa.
You know what I mean? I've never ran into that in the pen. Like it was with them throwing spit or throwing piss and spit. None of that. They've always been real professional in my experience. Thank God.
So we were young. Next thing you know, we get a bunch of homeboys in there. Queso from Lodi gets there. Big Mo from Motown. RG from Woodlake. And Mo from fucking Tracy. And Pilon from Soho. So we got hella heads in there now, right? So we start busting down, right? Our mocking, and we're doing all that cadence and everything. You know what I mean? On the fucking floor. They start trying to work out at the same time. So we're over there fucking working out. We're yelling over each other on the fucking, I swear to God, bro. We're yelling at each other, busting down. They're doing their rutina and we're doing our machina. They decide to try to start 5 minutes after we start. So we're going louder. When they start doing their cuenta, we start going fired up. And it was fucking basically fucking warfare on the tier. I swear to God, man. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't forget what you guys did. And you know what I mean? And like, you're like right there interacting and shit, man. And like, there was no type of respect, bro. Say my car went in your door by accident. They see it, they're gonna leave it there. You know what I'm saying? There was no type of respect, man.
They wouldn't jack, they wouldn't jack your stuff. They weren't stealing lines or nothing.
No, we weren't stealing no lines, man. But you know, they wouldn't acknowledge who you were. They wouldn't at all. It was like, it was total, like, it was hostile. It was fucking hostile, bro. Seriously. That, man, we had it to where if you had, okay, look, we had it to where if you were going to ICC and you can get off on one of them, get off on one of them. Them or the white boys. The homeboy, Scooby from San Fran, right? They bring a white boy out of ICC and they put it right in front of him, right? Like this, they're both cuffed up. The homeboy just cracked him, bah, broke his whole fucking jaw, bro.
Well, headbutt?
You know, with a headbutt. And the problem was, right? Well, the problem was the white boy he did it to was actually cool. You know what I mean? But there was so much disrespect by other people because they had some NLR cats that were in there that got validated. They were participating in it too. So we're like, fuck it. We get a chance at any of you guys.
Here's a little spot for our lesson of the day. Like Flacco said, that white boy, he was hella cool. Didn't disrespect nobody or nothing. He got involved in some political shit that he probably didn't want no part of. Got his face caved in.
You know,
that can happen at any time for any reason. You don't got to be out there disrespecting. You don't got to be doing nothing. You could just be going to committee, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's just how it was, bro. If you had any action, even if you were cuffed up, if you had any action to headbutt or something, get off. That's how it was. And so they did it perfect. Came out of ICC and he's right there in front of him. Homeboy just cracked him. But we never thought really you're gonna really have any action at anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know how the whole is. They're supposed to be right on you and this and that, man. But you know, it was kind of chaotic over there, man. You know,
yeah, my thing was always if you're cuffed and they're cuffed or they're cuffed and you're not, whatever. It's cool to. I always had it where it was cool to engage with hands and feet, but not to book nobody while they're in cuffs because I didn't look at that as a proper way to conduct business. Hey, yeah, no, but what I'm saying is I was just going to bring up a point that I was in the hole in Contra Costa one time, man, and there was this white dude that just kept nonstop running his mouth, bro. We were out cuffed one day, man, and I was way more limber back in the days. I mean, you seen pictures of me. I was 160 pounds, bro. Man, I must have jumped up and kicked that fool just right in his mask, bro. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it was devastating, bro, because he didn't know it was coming. He didn't, you know, no way to block it, and he didn't even try to move. So it was just, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, there's little things that we used to do back then, bro. Like a lot of listeners don't know. Like when we go to shower, we'd have our shirt on with our towel wrapped into our shirt.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So if anybody tried to spear you or something, you know what I mean? You had all your vital organs carried. You put your shower shoes right here. Yeah. Whatever side, you know what I mean? Whatever side you're walking again along the tier, you put it right there.
Shower shoes, your towel roll, all that shit. Shampoo bottle. Yeah.
The towel would be right here, but you'd have to wear a shirt because you wouldn't want them to come out and be able to choke you. So you have it tucked in. Yeah. And then your shower shoes would be right here. You know what I'm saying? Bam. Or right here, because your heart's right here. Boom. Yeah. When you're walking by. Yeah. And that was your security because you never know what was going to happen. Because people used to try to spear and all kinds of shit, man. You know, there's a reason why certain things were done back then.
Yeah, my shower roll would have shampoo, conditioner, shower shoes. Yeah, that's just the way to get down when they have, especially in bars, institution that has bars. Yeah, bro, doors, you don't gotta trip as much. You only got to worry about somebody maybe being able to make their lock malfunction and be able to get out and get that ass. Because man, a dude in his cell, get out of their cell while you're in cuffs. Man, that cop ain't gonna help. That cop ain't gonna help you. Oh, he's gonna panic for at least a minute until another cop comes over. You're gonna get fucked up.
He's gonna run.
Yeah. Hey man, we used to try to hide in fool cells. And Quentin coming back from the yard and stuff, we try to go back to the wrong cells and stuff if there was a target. You know what I mean? It very rarely worked because they were on top of that shit, man. But you know, you got to be careful shit like that. So you just getting uncuffed and somebody pops out from under the bed and you're still in cuffs in one of those Quentin cells. You're getting fucked up, bro. They gotta wait for another staff to come. They gotta unlock the door. Man, you're in trouble, bro.
I told you,
you get beat to death.
I've told that story like 4 times when I took off on the dude in the shower. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I at least waited for his cuffs to come off though. You know what I'm saying? But there was nothing they could do about it. I mean, that's probably one of the hardest situations to be, is being defenseless in a small confined area to where there's no gunner to protect you.
Yeah.
They're not going to run in there to help you. There's nothing you can do. You know what I'm saying? There's just nothing.
Yeah. Anyway, there's some harsh realities, man. The 80s were no joke. A lot of sacrifices were made. A lot of blood was shed. A lot of prison terms were increased. A lot of people died. A lot of people are disfigured. You know, there was a lot of stuff going on in the 80s, man. And it's an overlooked time because there's not a lot of written records. So we were fortunate to get this article from Miss OG T from Madera. We appreciate you. But yeah, you know, remember them people that are in their 60s now, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, they were down there. They had to go through some stuff, you know, 9 times out of 10, you know, maybe you might get lucky and end up a place cool, but that wasn't the normal back then, man. You were going to end up in a hostile environment, whether it be administration, Surenos, Bulldogs, it didn't matter. It was going down. Stay out of prison. You don't got to worry about that kind of stuff. This is your boy Rojo, my boy Big Flacco. Holler at y'all later, man. Have a great Thursday.